Escalating its threats, vowing to turn the White House to ashes with a nuclear strike. An editorial by Kim Jong-un's state media claiming, quote, "This is a stern warning to the U.S. imperialists and their stooges running amok for aggression and war moves."
Here to react, the Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. First of all, I'd love to know who copy edits an editorial for Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
I'm going to delete this line. He'll probably end up coming after you with some sort of gas attack and kill you like he did his brother. What do you make of this latest saber rattling?
We've seen this before, unfortunately, Clayton. This is a regime that has been making belligerent statements for years and years and years, and it's one of the reasons that we have to take this threat seriously, because it is a destabilizing actor in the region. And thanks to the Mar-a-Lago summit and thanks to what the president achieved there, China understands that as well now.
Let's talk about China. This is a fascinating part of this whole story here. What relationship do we now have with China? How can we truly count on China to come to our defense, to help us in the fight against North Korea if we have to? They don't want us in that region, meddling in that region necessarily, but what is that relationship going to look like over the next 4 years?
So classically, North Korea has always acted as a buffer state for China. China looks at this as some kind of insulation against something happening against China. But if you look at the body language of what happened in Mar-a-Lago, if you look at the decision with regards to the North Korean coal shipment that was turned around afterwards, let's just say that what the president did in Afghanistan and what the president did in Syria wasn't just about Syria or Afghanistan. A very simple message was sent that we have real red lines now. This isn't the Obama administration. When the president says something, he means it. And he sent a very clear message that other nations that have client states, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, have to look at their own internal red lines. Just how far will their client states go before they say, hey, this is just too much? And I think you've seen some very positive developments in both Moscow and Beijing, thanks to the president.
Right. I mean, it's amazing what the president has already been faced with when it comes to foreign policy in just these few months in office. And you're right in the thick of it. When you think about Syria, Iran, North Korea, ISIS, what keeps you up at night most? What makes you most concerned?
Look, I'm not worried anymore because we have a real commander-in-chief. We had 8 years of divisiveness. Think about it, how divisive it was internally. We had an administration that looked at people based upon gender, class, sexual preference, skin color. That's gone. This president is the president for all Americans, whether you voted for him or not. And on top of that, when you talk about these issues, we were divisive as a nation externally. We didn't treat our friends as friends, and we actually helped our enemies. Look at the JCPOA, look at the Iran deal. Yeah. That's all changed. We are now coming together. Look at NATO. Look at what happened with NATO, right? Yeah. NATO was a problem in terms of its lack of seriousness with budget spending of certain members. And what happened at the recent summit with the Secretary General? 2%, you got it. That's the president. So I sleep much better after January 20th.
Well, ISIS, unfortunately, is still around in 2017, topping the terror list. We've got a map, I believe, we can put up, shows there have been 406 extremist strikes or Islamist strikes around the globe already this year. The left is not taking it seriously here at home, but do you have a sense that politicians in Europe and elsewhere that have been so affected by the refugee invasion and then ISIS utilizing it, are they finally taking it serious? NATO's part of it, but are those countries taking it serious?
It depends upon the specific country we're talking about. But if you look at the attacks, look, how long would it take? We'd burn out the segment listing the number of attacks that happened in Europe in just the last year, whether it's Germany, whether it's Nice, whether it's the multiple ones in France or elsewhere, Brussels and so forth. So they have to come to terms with this. I think Brexit is connected to this. Brexit isn't just about what is Brussels doing, you know, unelected officials in the middle of Belgium. It's about national sovereignty. That's why we have a connection between Brexit and the Trump phenomena. We're reasserting common sense and safety. Look at immigration. Look at, Brexit is connected largely to that. And what have we said here in this administration? What has General Kelly done? We've had a 71% decrease in illegal migration. That's about national security as well.
And certainly the vote in France, even if it doesn't go Marine Le Pen's way,
it's a signal.
Is an indication.
It's a signal, absolutely.
When you're holding these meetings, obviously you can't divulge top secret information about what you're seeing around the world. What are the biggest concerns in the White House this morning, internationally? Is it North Korea? Is it Iran? Or is it ISIS?
We've inherited a world on fire. We had 8 years of so-called leading from behind, which means you're not leading. We had 8 years of strategic patience, which the vice president put to bed on the deck of the USS Ronald Reagan just 10 days ago. There are multiple threats, Clayton, multiple threats. ISIS is taken very seriously. Look at what the president did in front of Congress. Do you remember the most stressed 3 words in that speech? After 24 hours of fake news about he's going to go soft, he's not going to hold the line. What happened? He stopped, he looked right into the camera, and he said, the threat is radical Islamic terrorism. This man is serious, and he's not going to ameliorate, he's not going to manage. What did he say in that speech? Obliterate. And Donald Trump means it.
Well, we had General Keane on yesterday, and I asked him that question. I was a little surprised by his answer, because he said, you know, there have been some untying of the hands, but really not an overwhelming effort to crush ISIS in Raqqa and Mosul. Is there going to be a turn? Are there going to be more forces placed there? What are the big differences we should be seeing?
General Keane's a great patriot, a great soldier. Let me tell you an anecdote from week 3 of this administration. We had some 18 Alphas, some soon-to-be Green Berets come into the NSC for a briefing. I spoke to them, and then a Tier 1 operator came up to me who's on detail. So this is a serious warfighter. And with no apropos, he said to me, you have no idea, day 1, what it felt like. This great stone was taken from our shoulders. We felt unshackled, because this is a commander-in-chief who wants to secure the nation. That's week 3. So, you know, with all due respect to the general, things have changed immensely thanks to the president.
Well, quickly, I want to get your thoughts before we let you go. There was a call recently between Donald Trump, the president, and Vladimir Putin. Everyone's watching that relationship closely. What happened on that call?
We don't give our internal discussions away like that. It's the last team that gave away their game plan. But let me quote the boss, because it's always good to quote the boss. There was a press conference, the last one I think the president gave in Trump Tower, and they asked him, what about relations with Moscow? And he gave a very, very important answer. He said, look, I would like to have good relations with Moscow if possible. Right now, doesn't look very likely. If that is the case, so be it. However, remember what happened with Secretary Tillerson and Vladimir Putin. So even there might be a little bit of a thawing inside the Kremlin.
Okay, we're going to
calling him out face to face. All right.
Good to have you here in person.
Great to be here.
Really love that.
Great to see you guys.